Thank you. I call this Caucus meeting to order. I'll be looking for a motion to dispense with the reading in the minutes dated Wednesday, January 11th, 2023. Set and prepared by the clerk. 5 pieces of communication. Questions or comments on our communications? Next would be the mayor's report. Bob, do you know if the mayor's going to be here, or
What's that?
Mayor's report?
I will read the mayor's report.
Okay. Okay. Dallas, I need your committee to convene. You got to add 1 piece of legislation.
Okay. Call this finance and legislation meeting to order. Mr. Bayes? I'm here. Mr. Ballack? Here. Mr. Bigley is here. We have 1 piece from the auditor, and this is an ordinance authorizing the auditor to pay $563,234 to the company Sutphen. Is that correct?
Soften.
Okay. Corporation for One Fire Custom Apparatus / Pumper from the Fund 725 Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund and declaring an emergency. Elaboration?
I want to say that it was in 2021, you guys passed an ordinance giving permission and an agreement to purchase this. It is due, it's here, and we're going to pay it, and so that's the ordinance to pay it.
Is that truck done, or is it?
I mean, we haven't received it yet. From what I understand, it'll be coming by the end of this month. So I wanted the ordinance in place to be able to cut a check when we receive the check for the truck.
And that money's coming out of the COVID, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And we know 100% that that figure won't change. We won't have to come back for any more.
Attached to that is the invoice.
Okay. Okay. Motion to bring it out?
I'll make a motion to bring it out.
Second?
I will second that.
Or Jim, we grab me my pen real quick. Thank you. Anybody else, anything for finance and legislation? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second the motion?
Okay, under standing committees.
Finance and legislation for February 1st at 6 o'clock.
Any other committees? If none, okay, under legislation, we have 4 pieces. Questions or comments on legislation? If none, new business. Old business. I'm sorry, I reversed them. Unfinished business, I reversed them. Any unfinished business?
Just about the ambulance service. So we don't have an EMT block on that ambulance service?
No. They're all on call. It's like our volunteer fire department, they're all volunteer EMTs.
So how does that work?
So first, we're not trying to push the local companies out of business, because if we do that, we're gonna be in big trouble. So we always call the local companies first, because they have to get so many runs that allow them to stay in operation. So your private ambulance service, or not public, the private ambulance services are called first. If we can't get a decent response time out of them, then we will tone out our EMT volunteers. When they come out, they'll grab an ambulance and respond for us.
But that's on an on-call basis,
It's on an
correct?
on-call basis. Right.
Okay, so that's what we have here, that's what we've been looking,
Yes.
okay. So, but if they don't have an EMT on there, 'cause they don't always have, this happened recently, I know, that there was no EMT.
Right.
So they cannot do IVs, they cannot.
No.
So what happens then? There's no ambulance service that comes still?
Well, when we tone out, of course, we ask private companies first.
Yeah,
If it's a serious emergency, a lot of times companies that won't even normally service us will come. We not only tone out ours, we will tone out Lowville, we'll tone out Poland, and usually we try to get somebody. If we can't get anybody, we just can't get anybody. I mean,
No, the fire chief is saying that it's at least 20-25 minutes before they even get there.
Yeah, sometimes.
Right,
That's a long time.
It's not ideal, no,
right.
but it's better than having nothing at all.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, in most instances, this isn't your city's responsibility. That's true.
Well-
I mean, in most places, generally,
Yeah, but generally before, like I've been in the medical field for a long time, it's a 5 minute.
Yes.
Sure.
We try to keep it
Sure.
definitely under 10,
So, right,
hopefully for 8 minutes or something.
right. But I mean, I have no idea what's happening now where, you know, we're waiting all this time, because that was the big thing before.
So
You shouldn't wait longer than 5 to
Lane Ambulance was, when they were servicing Struthers, their response time was usually less than 8 minutes. They did not have enough personnel to do Boardman, who they had a contract with, us, Campbell, and Hubbard. They just ran out of people. So they pulled out of our area, and we were able to pick up MedStar, but MedStar said they only had enough personnel and vehicles to give us one ambulance between us and Campbell, which sometimes is not enough.
doesn't sound like
And that's why we went into, we would call Lowville, we'd call Poland, and then we added ours to it. So our response time is slower, but at least we're getting an ambulance.
This
Right.
might be a dumb question, but why is there so much of a shortage of EMTs?
shortage of everything in the
I
world.
understand that, I mean, this is all, you can
They're
get tons of
underpaid,
those. and-
that's
I
what it
understand
really
it.
is, I think that's why there's a shortage.
So we don't have an EMT, or we do
Not
have.
full-time, no.
Not
We,
full-time,
not
so-
full-time, we have volunteer
But a
EMTs.
few of our firemen are.
A couple of them are, I think we have 2 that are,
Yeah.
and then we have a lot that are interested in getting their
I was gonna
EMT.
say, like, so how much is that, or is it something that, like, we should require for them
Well,
to have
it's-
EMT?
It all depends on whether you want to go with the volunteer, with the fire department or an EMT service. Because a lot of firemen don't want to be EMT. There will be a basic,
Yeah,
but they won't, because there's a lot of schooling and a lot of
yeah,
work.
okay.
I think we should get together with Lowville, Camel, Coatesville, and create a.
Mutual aid
EMT
system.
EMT service.
Well, we do that
Absolutely.
now.
I mean, with a conglomerate of those 4 putting money in, we might be able to service this.
And hire people, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Well,
a great
that's what
idea.
we're doing this year, is we're going to track our expenditures for our ambulance.
We've been using it quite a bit already.
And that's why the mayor mentioned last meeting that we possibly could go to our citizens for a levy.
I don't think that's gonna fly.
If we can, if the ambulance, if we can bill enough, you know, to cover most of the cost of our ambulance service and supplement it with a levy, we may be able to go with a full-time EMT.
I think a levy would be tough to pass, especially since we got the road levy and the fire station levy out there.
And the water
Increase.
went out.
Yeah.
I don't
That
think
would be a
we
tough
have
one to
enough
pass.
money though to support adding
Well,
additional
I think,
services
the
with what we have now.
conglomerate would be a better way to check things out
Yeah.
and see.
It all comes down to the number of runs you make, and that's why the ambulance service, the private ambulance services have trouble also. The compensation for your runs, you have to quantity. You need a lot of them to make the runs worthwhile.
So how does the pay scale work for the people who are on call?
And well, we just set the wage
set it
at
at $17 an hour.
$17 an hour.
So I guess this is, unless I'm thinking of this wrong, this is set up to fail, because we pay someone $17 an hour to be on call, correct?
we pay them $17 an hour when they come out.
Come out, okay.
When they come out.
But we give most of our ambulance runs away to private companies.
Yes, we try to.
So it's-
Because we cannot support the city of Struthers with one ambulance. We can't do it.
I'm just
Right.
looking at it
Our
from
call,
a business perspective.
our
that-
call, we are
giving
trying
them-
to supplement them
Yeah,
so that they can stay in
Yeah,
business.
I don't think our startup was meant to create a business itself.
well, I
I thought
understand,
we
but
were
from the start, I've been very vocal on hoping that it stands on its own at minimum.
Yeah.
You know what
I
I
thought
mean?
we were supposed to give them a minimum time out no matter what. Weren't we?
Was, yeah.
Didn't
We don't
agree
seem
that?
to have a problem with
The
responders
pay,
or
yeah,
anything.
I guess
That's what we
my,
bumped it up for.
my
because
thing
it was
is, how
$12
does
bucks.
this generate revenue to pay for itself if we're giving our business to private companies, which we have the
But
same
we're,
business?
yeah, I know, but we started this up in case the private can't.
last.
Sure,
This
but
was
it,
an emergency situation.
but it seems like the emergency is more
I
than
know, but
we
if we
anticipate.
wanna go that route, then we gotta start thinking about a full service.
Well, I'm just saying, it seems like this is more than, you're getting a lot more runs than anticipated, correct?
No, with our service?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, that's why I'm just kinda like,
Because the private ambulance services have pulled out more than we thought they would.
okay,
So we are getting more than what
See,
we
and that's the
actually
thing
thought.
that's scary is that, so we're getting these, but we don't have an EMT.
Yeah, we're not equipped to
No.
handle it.
No.
So we're basically a ride service.
Well, and that's the whole thing.
And it
You
will be
cannot,
quicker.
if you need, there's different levels of support that
Right.
you're aware of. And if we don't have an EMT, then that level of support, we can't transport unless we have the EMT on the ambulance. Now, if it's something minor like a broken leg or something like that, we can transport. But if it requires
So then you still are
intervened,
waiting for the other ambulance service. at
if
that point.
on, when we need an EMT, yes, we will tone out until we get one.
so we kinda have a cart before the horse situation.
And we have to have two, we have to have an EMT and an EMT basic on our ambulance. We can't transport just with a emergency driver and an EMT. We have to have an EMT and at least an EMT basic.
So if we had to put a levy on, it would be a full-time ambulance service in the city of Struthers.
We'd have to,
It would have to
Would
be
have
for
to
them
be.
to agree.
and we'd probably be looking at least 2 ambulances.
Yeah, you would have
At
to do
least
that.
6 or 7 EMTs.
In order to get that levy even thought
To
about.
rotate.
To rotate the shifts and everything else.
You don't think?
No, I think you're right, 100%.
Because it's not gonna fly otherwise.
Just in general,
It's just scary. I
this
mean,
was a
it's just-
bigger
is.
undertaking, it seems
is.
like, than
Well, yeah,
possibly we anticipated, and now we're experiencing growing pains.
My hope is that the private ambulance services can come back in and give us full service.
Yeah,
That's my hope.
that would be mine as well, obviously. I don't think that this is, I think it's just obviously a good service to provide for citizens, but I also think this is not going to stand on its own. This is gonna be a financial burden on others.
well, it's gonna be financial no matter what, because the private services are gonna wanna be supplemented from us.
Correct.
And that's what Lane wanted that time we went out there, and we
Exactly.
probably should've went with them then, because we would've been all right.
We would have until we ran out of money.
Yeah.
Right. You're right. And the same thing, like Youngstown had to pay $500,000 to have ambulance service. We could.
Yeah, the
wind
one
up
that
the
they
same
wanted
problem.
wanted even more.
Right.
That just seems
If
crazy.
council may I interject some information, the problem with, like specifically Lane, is these area fire departments start putting their own EMTs and their own ambulances. There are a lot of Lane's workers went to work
Went to
for,
them, yeah.
and that's where the shortage started occurring in the ambulance, because they started getting jobs with the local fire departments.
And making those kind of wages.
You get a bigger community like, I guess, Canfield, you know, they got, what, 3 of them, 2 or 3 of them, and they hired all these people to run these ambulances. And that shorted their personnel, so they had to make cuts, you know.
And you have both out there. You have EMTs that don't want to be firemen, and you have firemen who don't want to be EMTs. You know what I'm saying? But Canfield is trying to get up all the personnel that will do both, and then have that full force.
That's hard,
And
that's
it
hard.
may come down to where it's a battle for everybody to try to get those personnel.
Okay, Bob, so the reality of it is, if I call 911, the first question I should ask them is, how quick are you gonna get an ambulance to myself? Because if it's not gonna be quick enough, I'm gonna transport this person by myself.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Or you should
So
ask,
when I call 911, they would be able to answer that question?
No.
Not really,
No.
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 How long would it take them? Like you're saying that, okay, we got calls out to all these places, now we gotta call our own.
Right. So once we call an ambulance service, they will give us estimated response time. Or
Okay,
they will tell us we don't have anybody, we won't have anybody for an hour, because
okay.
all our ambulances are at the hospital waiting to unload.
Can a person that calls 911 get that information from them? Because I mean, as
They
far as
don't
I'm
have to think
concerned.
so. I think they just
No.
alert the
Yeah.
I've had to wait for an ambulance a
Dispatch.
few times, and I don't think they always say they're coming, they don't actually tell you.
No.
Yeah.
It's
No,
10
I-
minutes, it's.
They're on their
that
way.
they-
know an instance where they said it was a person's mother that needed to go, she was elderly, and they said you might as well take her yourself, basically.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think
they
it
don't
depends
know
on
till
what
they
the, like, they
call.
have to make
Yeah.
the decision.
Right,
What's,
yeah,
what's
yeah.
But, I
going
mean,
on? Is
yeah.
it a fall? Is it, you
Yeah,
know?
What I'm getting at is if the 911 service, they call, they get a response, yeah, we can have somebody out there in 10 minutes, can they relay that information to the person that's waiting?
Not
Might
our
be a
911
liability.
system can.
Okay,
Once our firemen arrive on scene, they will have an ETA of how long the ambulance will be. So
okay,
they can pass that information on. An ambulance is 45 minutes out, what do you wanna do?
yeah.
Or something to that aspect, but
I mean, it sounds to me like if I had a real emergency at my house, I'm transporting somebody up. I can be
Right.
at St. Elizabeth in
17
probably less
minutes.
than 10 minutes if I'm
Yeah.
flying,
Yeah.
17 minutes.
you know, with an emergency.
now we have a couple of EMTs that are firemen, okay? And if they respond as a fireman and they start some of the services,
On site, they
Well,
can.
once they start those
maintain it.
services, they can't stop those services.
Right.
So they have to get one of our ambulances out, but then at that point, all we need is a basic to drive it, you know?
So I guess it.
Because we'll have
I was just gonna
EMT
ask
on
that.
site.
So if somebody calls in 911, you go through the process, you can't find an ambulance service, how much longer is it gonna take for our people to alert the people that are on call
Well,
to get out
We pretty
to?
much told our guys out as soon as we get a medical
Usually
call.
if you call 911, the fire comes anyway.
So,
Right,
we'll-
it's
we'll-
fire,
yeah.
ambulance.
so
and
our
police.
fire department is going to respond and we will tone out a medical. And then if we don't need them, of course, everybody got pagers, we can tell them to cancel.
So actually, the.
So we're alerting them that we have the possibility of a medical call almost immediately with every call,
Yeah.
okay?
And like you said, if the fire is there and the person's that bad, EMT if he's on the fire truck, he basically has to start.
Right.
He has to start maintaining.
Can anybody
that
drive that
person's-
ambulance though?
No.
That's what I was just thinking. Who
If
could-
you are in township, Fulham Township or something, all you have to do is to be an emergency driver, which means a police officer or anybody else
Right.
can drive that
So our
vehicle.
voluntary firemen can't
But
drive it.
because we are a city, we're required to have 2 EMTs, an EMT advanced and basic, or,
So that's what it is, two.
right. So
two.
we have to have 2, where a township's only required to have 1.
Is that a state thing?
And how many firemen usually work a shift?
And see, and that's the same thing, if you have a fireman that's just a fireman, he could drive an emergency vehicle, so he could drive an ambulance if we were not the city. But the city's required to have 2 EMT, and we contacted the state and asked for a waiver of that, and they told us no.
Oh, so it's not just us saying that we have to.
But that's become a common thing in all cities. Maybe we could push that labor, you know, keep bugging them about it and maybe they
Yeah,
can do
at the
something.
state level or something.
They're gonna have to do something.
Especially with the shortage of
Um,
ambulances.
we're talking about the fire department. I won't be here next week, I'm going on vacation
Again?
again. It seems like a yearly thing or something. But our fire department applied for a grant and got a grant for $9,000. $9,729.25 for radios or radio equipment, you know, chargers, bell mics, pagers, anything related. Now the grant is through the MARC system. MARC is, what's a multi-agency radio something. It's written in here, I can't find it. So that's the state ran, it's run through the state of Ohio, the Ohio Fire Marshal, Department of Commerce, runs the MARC's radio system, which is a digital radio system, and digital radio is what everybody's going to because they're a lot clearer, they got a better range and connection and everything else. So they got this grant, and in order for them to get the grant money, they have to sign up for the MARC's program. There's 2 different, right now, there's a county digital radio system and there's the statewide digital system. State gave them this grant. The state says if you take this money, you gotta sign up with our system. We can't sign up with the county. Our police is currently on the county. Won't have any difference, you know, we can still keep the police on the county, but the fire will have to sign up for the MARCs. So, there's gonna probably be legislation at the next caucus meeting asking that we can enter into a contract with the state Marks program, just so they can get this grant. They already have some radios that have to be programmed, and this will allow them to program all their radios on the Marks system. Okay?
Is there not, is there a requirement by a certain date that we have to do something to?
Yeah, the money has to be spent by July 30th.
No, I mean, isn't there something
Oh.
saying we have to get a certain kind of radio that we don't have right now?
That could be coming. There will be in the future. The digital radios are the future, and then they have to be encoded. You can't, when you run a scanner now, you can't listen into Struthers radio anymore. Because the digital radios that they have are encrypted, so you can't listen in. The criminals can't listen in on the communication or anything else. And the same thing will happen with our fire department when they go to digital radios.
So is that gonna be enough money, that 9,000?
We've already had FEMA grant, and we have already purchased a lot of radios. So
Okay.
no, this would not, the radios are like $3,000 a piece. But we got a grant through FEMA, so we have the radios, they're just not programmed. This will allow us to program the radios and get onto the Mark system.
What's it cost a year for that?
Okay, so the pricing for a Mark's radio system to be in that system is, and I'm gonna tell you the high price, because it's $25 per radio. We have 30 radios.
A year.
It could be $9,000 a year to be in the system. Currently, under state legislation, the state of Ohio supplements the price for municipalities. So our price, I've heard two different things. I've heard $10. I also heard $10 supplement. So it's either going to be $10 or $15 per radio. So somewhere around 3,000, high end 9,000. Depends on what the state does with their funding. Because their fiscal year will end in June. If they renew it, we're going to be around the $3,000 a year mark.
And
If
that'll
they
come
don't renew it,
out
we
of
could
the
go up
fire,
to
the
higher.
fire's budget, the fire station's budget?
Yes, their communications. I think it's a much needed radio system. The thing about the Mark system, because it is ran by the state of Ohio, your radio is going to work anywhere in the state of Ohio. Okay? With the police on the county, it serves our needs here. If they went to Cincinnati or something, it wouldn't work. If they get so far away from the county, their radios no longer work.
But our firemen will still be able to communicate with the police, right?
Well,
Because of that.
yes, what will happen is, we actually have 2 county radios that the fire department has. But there's a patch-in way that they can do patch-ins.
Okay.
Marks has to be the fire department's primary radio system. It doesn't have to be their only one, so they can also have a couple channels on the county system. But the primary has to be on the Mark system. And believe me, this took me a week to figure this stuff out.
Why are you going on vacation?
You got work to do.
Okay, any unfinished business? Report of our law director, John?
No report.
Questions for our law director? Chrissy?
I've submitted a report of December of 2022. We've already had the budget meetings with the departments, and the mayor and I will begin the process of working on the 2023 permanent budget, which, as you know, needs to be passed by the end of March. Do you have anything else?
Question for our auditor? Report of our safety director, Bob. I know you gave a nice little
I think I just gave a
informational.
report. That's
Yeah. Questions for our safety director? Need a motion to adjourn caucus.
Make a motion.
Brownie seconded. Caucus is adjourned.
Marks.